In today's news video, we cover breaking, Ukraine strikes back, Ukrainian Defence Forces repel Russian attacks and carry out successful strikes on Russian positions. Russian military suffers 760 casualties in one day. Ukraine's latest casualty report reveals devastating losses. Iran's parliament speaker issues ultimatum, EU blacklists IRGC at their peril. Russia issues dire warning, NATO deployment of heavy weapons to Ukraine could escalate conflict to dangerous levels. Enjoy watching and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on important news. Ukrainian Defence Forces have repelled Russian attacks near 16 settlements across 3 oblasts and have carried out numerous successful strikes on Russian positions, hitting nearly 30 clusters of Russian military personnel and 7 Russian anti-aircraft missile systems. Quote, over the course of the past 24 hours, enemy forces carried out 9 missile strikes and 23 airstrikes and deployed multiple launch rocket systems, MLRS, to over 80 further attacks. There is a significant ongoing threat of Russian air and missile strikes on civilian facilities across Ukraine. Enemy forces are focusing their main efforts on the Bakhmut and Avdiivka front offensives. They are conducting defensive operations on the Kupiansk, Lyman, Novopavlivka, and Kherson fronts. No Russian offensive groups have been reported on the Volyn, Polishcha, Sivershchina, or Slobozhanskina fronts, though Russia continues to reinforce its aircraft fleet in Belarus under the guise of joint military exercises. Russian forces shelled areas in and around Timofivka, Sumy Oblast, and Veterinarn, Streleka, Zilin, Storitsia, Vovchansk, Vilcha, Budarki, Krasnopershi, Dvorykna, and Kupiansk, Kharkiv Oblast. The General Staff reported that Russia is preparing to launch another covert mobilization wave in temporarily occupied Crimea. In Sevastopol, IT and finance workers and other professionals who had previously been exempted have started to receive call-up notices. Ukrainian aircraft conducted 21 airstrikes on clusters of Russian occupation forces and 7 on Russian anti-aircraft missile systems. Ukrainian forces also destroyed 3 Lancet 3 UAVs. Ukraine's rocket forces and artillery units struck 6 Russian command posts, 8 clusters of Russian military personnel, and an ammunition storage point. According to data from the Ukrainian military, Russia suffered 760 military casualties in Ukraine over the course of a single day this week. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine stated that a total of 118,530 Russian combat losses have been recorded since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in February of last year. A total of 118,530 Russian combat losses have been recorded since Russia's invasion of Ukraine began in February of last year, the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine stated in its most recent casualty report released Thursday. In addition to personnel, Russia has also lost 3,136 tanks, 6,235 armored fighting vehicles, and 2,122 artillery systems, according to the updated data provided by the Ukrainian military. In addition to personnel, Russia has also lost 3,136 tanks, 6,235 armored fighting vehicles, and 2,122 artillery systems. These reported losses came as Russia continued its assaults in Ukraine's eastern Donetsk province. Meanwhile, Polish President Andrzej Duda expressed fears of a new Russian offensive coming in a few months. Several countries have announced they will collectively send hundreds of Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine, which would need the approval of Germany, the vehicle's producer and exporter. However, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who has the authority to approve or veto the re-export of Leopard 2s, continues to mull over sending the tanks in the face of growing international pressure. The Iranian parliament speaker warned the EU countries against blacklisting the IRGC, saying Iran will deal with EU armies in the region as terrorist groups if the EU goes ahead with its decision. Speaking during a ceremony held to commemorate 437 Houthi defense martyrs in the city of Bandar Anzali, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagheri Ghalibaf pointed to the European countries' recent attempt to blacklist the Iranian IRGC as a terrorist organization and said that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, is an official military institution in the Islamic Republic and a well-known anti-terrorism organization in the world. Therefore, if the European Union does not avoid its miscalculation, it will show that it has supported terrorism as a part of its official policy. According to Ghalibaf, if the proposal of the European Parliament to declare IRGC as a terrorist organization is approved, the Iranian Parliament will retaliate and put the European governments that support terrorists and their armies on the terrorism list. We will deal with them as a terrorist group, he further pointed out. Ghalibaf went on to note that the enemies are trying to eliminate martyrdom culture by waging a hybrid war, stressing that through following the path of martyrs, the problems could be resolved and the country can be saved from the threats. Russia has issued a warning against NATO's possible deployment of heavy weapons such as tanks and missile systems to Ukraine. The Kremlin stated that it would be an extremely dangerous escalation of the current conflict. The warning came as Western countries consider providing Ukraine with more advanced military equipment as Russian forces continue to attack Ukrainian territory. Germany has faced significant pressure to provide Ukraine with tanks, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressing frustration about not receiving enough heavy weapons. On Friday, the United States will hold a meeting with its allies at Ramstein Air Base in Germany to discuss ways to support Ukraine's military defense. The meeting, which will be led by U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, aims to reaffirm the country's commitment to supporting Ukraine's self-defense in the long term, but it is not known if specific new equipment will be discussed. Western countries have expressed concerns that Ukraine could use long-range weapons to target Russia or Crimea, a peninsula annexed by Russia in 2014, despite Ukraine's assurance that it will not do so. Russia has warned that it will retaliate if this were to happen. Moscow's ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Antonov, has warned that Russia will destroy any weapons supplied by the U.S. or NATO to Ukraine. He stated that it is impossible to defeat Russia. Antonov also criticized the U.S. for what he described as more and more belligerent rhetoric over Ukraine and accused the U.S. of encouraging the Ukrainian government to commit acts of terror in Russia. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev also warned that continued support for Ukraine by the West could lead to nuclear war. He stated that a nuclear power losing in a conventional war could trigger a nuclear war, and that nuclear powers have not lost major conflicts that determine their fate. Russia's official spokesperson, Dmitry Peskov, stated that Medvedev's comments are in line with Russia's nuclear doctrine. The Kremlin has urged the West not to provide Ukraine with weapons capable of striking Russian forces and territory. The United States will be gathering its allies at an airbase in Ramstein, Germany for talks on supporting Ukraine militarily on Friday, but did not mention any specific new equipment.